Oh, Cowboys lose. And I have to admit, I was a little surprised by the final score. We are the Treehouse Cowboys. I'm Dan O'Malley along with Trey Trenholm. We are part of the Treehouse Podcast show. 5 days a week, you can catch treehouseonair.com, wherever you get your podcasts, even here on YouTube. For all things Treehouse, go to treehouseonair.com. This is our Cowboys-specific football show that we enjoy doing, mainly because, as I've said before, it's not therapy, but it is therapeutic because we are lifelong Cowboys fans, and we need to come together and talk about these things. It's important not to keep these emotions bottled up. It's important to share them. And I think that after the Cowboys are now 1-2, we have lots to share, right, Trey?
Yes, we have a cornucopia of a plethora of feelings and thoughts on what a turd they are.
Well put. So let's start with what we've been doing the first couple of weeks here in this 2024 season of the NFL and our Dallas Cowboys, and that is the Cowboys losing to the Ravens this week. So what are our big three takeaways? Trey, what is your big takeaway from the Cowboys' loss to the Ravens at home?
That CeeDee Lamb and Dak seem to be on playing two different games. That's like I understand, like, CeeDee Lamb looked like he was about to blow a gasket on the sideline, and Dak looked like he was. I can't recall a good throw he made yesterday, and that may be really being overly dramatic, but in all honesty, all I can see was just like there was the one pass that he's throwing it to Zeke, and it needed to be on his like left shoulder, and he threw it to the right shoulder, and and just a simple. I mean, it was like a 2-yard out.
Yeah. On that one, I know that some quarterbacks. I know the throw you're talking about. Zeke's going into the flat, and sometimes what the quarterback will do is they'll try to put it on that inside hip as opposed to the outside shoulder, giving them the opportunity to turn and catch and start running downfield, all in sort of a fluid motion. That doesn't work though if you're aiming for the right hip and you end up at the official's hat type of location. So Zeke had no chance on that. I'm with you. I don't recall any really great throws that Dak had in the game. Now that, I need to disclose that I didn't see most of the fourth quarter and some of those throws until I watched the highlights. A few of those looked pretty good, but at that time it was too little too late.
Well, yeah. And I mean, don't let the final score fool you. It was an ass whipping. The Ravens, I happened to turn on. I had kind of quit watching it. Then I turned on the fourth quarter. And I mean, the Ravens are basically as a team in prevent, and just, and the Cowboys are finally, getting some yards, but it was because they were in prevent. They had gotten their ass whipped the whole game.
So here's my takeaway on that. I've got an additional one as well. But one of my takeaways from this game is I was surprised that the Cowboys made it interesting, because usually in these types of games where they get down early and they get down by a lot early, they have a tendency to roll over and just turn into a slut puppy, rub my belly until it's time to go home. And in this game, they actually did manage to make it interesting. And you are correct. A lot of that started with garbage touchdowns. But at a certain point, the garbage touchdowns add up, and then it becomes a genuine comeback. And that's actually what happened in this game in the fourth quarter. I was so stunned by the final score. I had to wait for the highlights to be released so I could actually see what happened in the fourth quarter, because typically I don't need to see the whole game because this team rolls over.
Yeah, but it still ends the same way.
It does. So there's the other side of that coin. While I'm surprised that they made it interesting at the end, garbage touchdowns aside, they then scored enough to make it interesting to where the Ravens were then not playing prevent. They actually had to finish the game. The problem was they shouldn't have been coming from behind in the first place, because that's how much they suck right now. And if we're being honest, and if they are being honest with themselves, the Cowboys suck. and they need to fix some stuff.
Well, and
And
I believe the game ended on a Dak interception, didn't it? Basically.
I'll be fully honest with you. I don't even remember that highlight because I stopped watching the highlights too. Because I was like, okay, yeah, this is over.
I mean, but I'll grant you, the Ravens probably were a better, this sounds like a sports cliche, but probably the best 0-2 team there was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. They are, incredibly talented. When you have Derrick Henry as your back, you're pretty solid. But
that right there gets me to my third takeaway, which is the absolute lack of a running game and the massive Derrick Henry reminder to the Cowboys, to Jerry Jones, and to all the Cowboys fans watching and in attendance that the Cowboys didn't even call Derrick Henry in the offseason. Despite the fact he was working out in Dallas, he was here. He was right there. All you got to do is go, hey, bro, you want to put a star on your helmet? And he would have said yes. And that right there would have solved the majority of the problems that Cowboys have had in the 2 losses.
And I believe his people made overtures to Jerry to try to get him, like that. Hey, this would be a good fit. And it would have.
Here's the thing. Derrick Henry's so big, he doesn't really fit anywhere, but that's what's great about him. It doesn't matter what style of running game you have. You hand the ball and you just let him mow people down.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're doing isolated blocking schemes, stretch, zone blocking schemes, whatever the case is, hand him the ball and let him run downhill and over people, because that's exactly what he did to the Cowboys yesterday.
And I still now it's even more puzzling to me, because you want to talk about the contracts of, wow, now your 2 big offseason signings, Dak and CD, they look completely at odds.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a Micah Parsons issue that you got to either somehow figure out if it's even possible.
Yeah.
And so right now the offseason's looking even worse than it did last week, which that's pretty bad.
It is pretty bad.
I mean, Carolina got a win with Andy Dalton.
Oh man. Yeah. Now I did see one of the highlights for the Carolina game, and Andy Dalton had a nice dime that he threw to Adam Thielen in the end zone. That was nice.
Yeah.
So look, one of the things in the offseason that drove me nuts was the fact that, like we were just talking about, Derrick Henry was available, and all of us intelligent, for the most part, Cowboys fans were thinking, oh yeah, give us that guy. But no, we didn't do that. Instead, what does Jerry do? He go and re-signs Zeke because it makes him feel good. That, at the end of the day, is how Jerry signs players, because it makes him feel warm and fuzzy. The thing is, I don't want warm and fuzzy. I want Derrick Henry killing people on the field, because when you look at those 2 running backs, because the Cowboys did sign a free agent running back in the offseason, and that was Zeke. And the other one that could have been yours for the taking was Derrick Henry, and they went with Zeke, and then we saw the outcome yesterday.
And let's be honest, has Zeke been worth a damn after his 2nd year? Maybe it was 3rd, but I mean, there was a precipitous fall off after like the first 2 or 3 years, and then he's never been the same.
If I remember correctly, after he got his big contract, I think he had one really solid year, and after that, it's just been meh.
Yeah.
And that's why the Cowboys let him go. New England picked him up, but then New England's like, we're good. And then here comes warm and fuzzy Jerry saying, we'll take you back, buddy.
It's like Jerry thought if he signs him this time and he does well, then it makes everything all right.
I think it's because Jerry's chasing his own tail, because, and this is something Cowboys fans have heard, and we know it for nearly 3 decades, is Jerry is chasing a trophy, and he's chasing his own tail, trying to do it, and he's trying to do it in ways that make him feel good.
Well, but I think Jerry, and I'll even cut Jerry some slack on this, because this is kind of a well-known phenomenon in with football coaches, but especially in the NFL with owners and GMs, is not only does Jerry want to win the Super Bowl, but he wants to be the genius. I mean, and this goes back to that discovered Quincy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be the genius that took Dak in the 3rd round. And you go back, well, maybe the other 29 teams in the NFL didn't take Dak in the first 2 rounds because they knew something.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by Jerry chasing his own tail, because instead of chasing Super Bowls, even though that's what he claims, he's chasing credibility.
Oh, absolutely.
And he hasn't caught it.
Because in that, and I think we probably discussed this last year. You and I know, have discussed this off air of the dichotomy of Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, the owner, will go down as probably the most trend-setting, groundbreaking owner in NFL history. I mean, everything. I mean, a lot of people don't remember it, but there were no stadium naming rights. There were no official drinks of a stadium. All that is Jerry Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And salary cap, Jerry Jones. So, but Jerry Jones, the GM, no one would take.
No.
Not even for the USFL or whatever the hell it is now.
So that actually takes us to our next question for today's Treehouse Cowboys show.
And I got to tell you, your graphic game, it's solid.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were about to say something, really.
No, that's.
But let's let the Chiron down there that I clicked on so professionally speak for us. Why, Trey? Why do the Cowboys suck? Is it because of Jerry? Is it something else?
I'm gonna have to. I mean, overall, yes, I think you always have to say Jerry, but
to me, that's the given. To me, that's the easy thing to say. I guess you need to say it just so it's said, and then move on to other reasons that perhaps you can do something about. Because I remember, doing post-game shows on the Cowboys radio network and having to tell people, you can be as mad as you want about Jerry the GM, but it's not going to change. So you just have to accept it and try to figure out things you can complain about enough that might actually stand a chance of changing.
So I'm going to. I believe I made this point last week, and I'll do it again. Like last week, I think I said Dan Quinn and the Redskins look really good. I think at a certain point, one of the things I noticed yesterday that I don't recall last year, and it could have been, and I just don't remember, but they seem to be fundamentally lackluster as far as tackling, blocking, the basic fundamentals. I mean, I remember you and I were watching the game, and there was one play where one of our linemen, looked like he was about to try a wrestling move on the D lineman and put him in a headlock.
Yeah.
And how many missed tackles were there yesterday?
Or CeeDee Lamb's fumble when he catches the ball, and on his fourth step, he's still holding the ball out in front of him like he's Adam West in Batman with the bomb running around New York City. That you don't hold the football that way, and it gets knocked out. And that's when I started laughing. Yeah. Because that's when my Cowboys reminded me how ridiculous they are and how ridiculous it is for me to care too much. I need to be able to detach a little bit and laugh at my team, which is part of the reason why we do this show. And everything you mentioned as to the answers to why the Cowboys suck, besides Jerry the GM, all those fundamentals you said, to me, the Cowboys suck because of poor coaching. Every single loss this year, and most of the losses in the McCarthy era, most of the losses in the Jason Garrett era will show you poor coaching. The Ravens didn't do anything new or different that they haven't been doing since they got Lamar Jackson a quarterback. Nothing. It's actually a lot of the same stuff that Dak did in his rookie season that the rest of the league figured out and didn't let him do anymore, which is play action passing, the RPO type stuff, bootlegs, waggles, all this stuff. The Cowboys don't seem to learn. They don't seem to learn at all. And that goes to coaching, poor tackling, fumbling after 4 steps, not protecting the football, looking lost and pouting. Sideline pouting. This team is really good at pouting, and there's no one on that sideline that really seems to really get into them and get after it. The closest, honestly, was kind of like you mentioned, was CeeDee Lamb and Dak getting into it. That at least showed some fire.
Yeah, I totally agree. The Cowboys, it's funny. My two teams, Cowboys, Texas Longhorns, and one of the things with the Longhorns that Steve Sarkisian has seems to have changed is Texas would always go into games. You could almost see the mentality of, well, we're Texas, so people are going to just roll over, and then kind of shocked when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally got that mentality changed of no one's going to do anything. You got to go out there and whip ass, and knock on wood, that's what they're doing so far this year.
I'm happy that you have one team that's performing.
Yeah. But the Cowboys seem to have that same mentality of, oh, we're the Cowboys, especially at home. It seems like, well, people are just going to roll over. And, I don't know if you saw any of the New Orleans Philly game, because I was really kind of watching that, hoping that New Orleans was just going to whip Philly. And then I could go, all right, well, okay, maybe New Orleans is really, really good. And no.
Yeah, that was a barometer game as a fan. It's like, okay, let's see how that game goes, and then we'll see how we feel about our Cowboys going against the Ravens. And now we know Philly ended up pulling that one out. The Cowboys didn't, and now the Cowboys sit at 1-2. And you mentioned earlier with Jerry Jones and how he will go down as one of the greatest owners of all time. And it really is true, because this is how good at business Jerry Jones is. The Cowboys have not won a Super Bowl going on 30 years, and they are still the most valuable NFL franchise in the league. Just imagine if they won a couple in there. They would be probably the most valuable sports franchise, which they are in like the top 10 or top 5.
I think they're still the top. The last thing I read about franchise values was the Cowboys have been the first team to top 10 billion in estimated worth.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of those lists at different times throughout the year, so I know that they're the most valuable NFL franchise, and I think it's Manchester United that competes with them as far as overall most valuable sports team type of thing. But it's really astounding to think how much the Cowboys might be worth if they just won one Super Bowl in the last 30 years. So love him or hate him, as the owner, general manager of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones will make headlines. And we know that as Cowboys fans. And even still, being fans of the Cowboys before he bought the team, he still manages to say some things that make us go, what? And I think this might have been the biggest one that I've heard come out of his mouth in the entire time that he has owned the Cowboys. And that's saying something, because we're talking about Jerry Jones. So on Friday, I believe it was Friday at practice, actor, comedian, and huge Cowboys fan Jamie Foxx is doing an Instagram live in the stands at the Star in Frisco, sitting next to Jerry Jones. And I firmly believe, pun intended, that Jerry didn't know that Jamie Foxx was doing something live on the internet. And because if he did, I don't think he would have said what he said. And on the off chance you didn't hear it, here's what happened on Jamie Foxx's Instagram live at Cowboys practice next to Jerry Jones. Oh, hang on. It'll probably help if I actually, make it to where you can hear it. And here we go.
Hey, that's pretty good right there. He showed balance. 5, 9, 1/2, 2, 10. 5, 9, 2, 10. 4, 4, 1. Okay. 9 3-inch head. Mm-hmm. 8 1/2 inch deck.
Whoa, my.
Before we get into the meat of what Jerry said, and this is going to date me, and probably you did, because you'll understand this reference. But the look on Jamie Foxx's face was like back when he and Jim Carrey were on In Living Color, and he's like that, or like Tim Conway and Harvey Korman would, you see it, they look at like, you're really doing that to me now.
Yeah, that would have been a great moment had Jerry just reached over and like slap Jamie on the back going, ha ha, like, I gotcha. I'm just trolling you or something like along those lines. But the way he said it was so matter of fact. And the delivery on it kind of had me wonder, was there something else after that?
Oh, I'm sure.
What was after? Okay, hang on. Let me play this for you again at the end. And
while we're listening to it, I'm going to ask you this question, Dan. Do you really want to know what was after it?
A little bit.
8.5-inch dick.
Mm-hmm. Again.
9 3-inch hand.
9 3-inch hands.
8.5-inch dick.
So there you go. That delivery right there tells you, at least me, that there was something else coming after that statement. I don't know what it is, because really, what is there after that you have to report on measuring wise?
Girth?
Oh, girth. Yes, exactly what it is. Cowboys lose, but by God, they're girthy.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Treehouse Cowboys. All things Treehouse at treehouseonair.com. We'll see you next week after the Giants game.